Only thing more dangerous than a Toyota Quantum is a Toyota Avanza, my bro. Have you ever seen a Toyota Avanza not covered in dents? Exactly my point. So this guy's obviously done this before. He knows his way around. Vidkoppen, my brother. It's getting a bit hairy. It's a bit off-roady. So he's like, you know what? I'm going to pull back up here where it's civilized. Let me just taste this tar a little bit. Taxi's like, have the tar. I'm going off-road. How's your mother? Avanza's like, cool. I'm going to join you. My mother's fine, by the way. Thanks for asking. Then this little private school, Renault Tribe, is like, hey, guys, I'm just going to follow you as well. I'm kind of new to Vidkoppen. And then, boom, just to top it all off, the cyclists. No, we don't always hate cyclists. Sometimes they're pretty cool.
Kablan, what's that? Eh? Ke batla ta bontsha driver ga tse ding o motho o ya mamonana wa laitha ne o patala mfaneng o tshwa go batho ba ke bona ba go mamba ba fola ba ke tshwa ba.
Yeah, jokes aside, there's a lot going on in South Africa, so let's hear people's opinion and your opinion. At the same time, laugh, subscribe if you haven't subscribed. Let's enjoy, guys.
That's not mine.
That's not a case.
That's not case.
The load shedding before the end of the year should have been something of the past.
Serious?
Yes.
Which
Load shedding by the end of this year will be something of the
by
past.
end of this year.
A few moments later.
Dirani Eskom. Iyazela phi load shedding izawuvuka namhlanje nangomso. Dirani Eskom.
It's simple. ANC needs to be eliminated in order for us to live our best lives. I totally agree. It's because of ANC that we are where we are. Okay, so what you're saying is ANC is causing all of our problems? Yes, that's exactly what he's saying. That's ANC gone. G-A-W. That's a made-up word. It's not an actual... Definitely a word. Absolutely a word. Definitely. Okay, it's time for a test. Name any problem right now. Headaches. Duh. ANC. Global warming. ANC. He's preaching. Let's say I don't have a perfectly good relationship with my father, and because of that it's busy translating into my relationship with my son. This guy. ANC. ANC. My friend, it's time to vote.
ANC. Oh, you want to...
So if you don't know much, but the ANC, which is the ruling party of South Africa since 1994, is the African National Congress. Here's the logo if you haven't seen it before.
Now we know.
So now we all know about Pixley. Pixley is said to be the founder of the ANC. What you may not know is that Pixley is actually the nephew of John Dube. John Dube, now known as the co-founder of the ANC. But the ANC is the baby of SANNC, which John Dube was the founding president of. The other co-founders are Josiah Kumathe and Sol Plaatje. Now these are the founders, as you can see. It should always raise questions when you see people seated in this order, dressed like this. Who could be their influence? Where did they study? What kind of lives did they live? I think it's more about what was the outcome of the party that really tells the story. I believe they all had good intentions.
Were they in
But I
exile?
also know that European influence can be very detrimental and destructive to the growth of Africa. I won't lie, I do believe that the ANC at some point had a chance to change the story of South Africa.
How?
I would really encourage looking into the lives of the individuals so you can get a bigger picture of what I'm talking about. But now let's get into what changed the history of the African National Congress and who was behind it all. I'm going to be referring to them in my language, Amajuda, for CGV purposes. So a group of Amajuda in 1963 infiltrated the ANC and reconstructed it. Their names were Lionel Bernstein, Bob Hippel, Dennis Goldberg, Arthur Goldrich, Hazel Goldrich, and James Cantor. Now in South Africa, these names might sound like anti-apartheid activists. But were they really? Who knows? Maybe they wanted to continue mining gold and diamonds. But you know what? I withdraw. Let's carry on. They clothed themselves in our black frontmen, who we know as Nelson Mandela, Walter Sisulu, Govan Mbeki,
Oliver
Raymond
Tambo.
Mhlaba, and Ahmed Kathrada. You know the NAACP of the United States? It's the big brother of the newly found ANC. The only difference was that the ANC was much more violent and followed a communist approach. This organization was funded and supported by the Soviet Union as well as the big guns of the USA. Yeah. American civil rights as well as the anti-apartheid activism have some secrets that leave a lot to be desired, but I withdraw. Not to mention that they also supported white rule in South Africa during apartheid. Not because they agreed to it, but rather because they needed a stable South Africa in order to extract uranium from South African mines. The same mines that my people never return from every day.
Is thank you to the Jewish community.
But let's keep going.
Have I told you guys like some of the penalties in other countries when you come in illegally?
No.
Have I told you guys?
No.
I haven't told you this.
No.
Listen to this, man. This is crazy. So in Singapore, if you enter into the country illegally, you get 6 months in jail. In Russia, it's 2 years in a hard labor camp.
Oh, okay, that's a bad.
Pakistan is 10 years in jail. India, it's 8 years in jail. North Korea, it's death penalty. They don't play there. In Nigeria, it's 5 years in jail. In Malawi, it's 2 years in jail with deportation. In Zimbabwe...
Imagine, dog, imagine.
Yeah.
Shit, tell that to your Uber driver delivery guy. Do you know in your country, when you enter illegally, what happens?
In Zimbabwe, it's 1 year in jail or deportation.
In Zim.
In Zim.
To enter Zim illegally,
Yeah.
it's 1 year in jail.
Yeah.
Whoa.
In Botswana, it's...
Nangwago's not fucking around.
Yeah. And then it's in Botswana, it's immediate deportation and possible jail time. In America, it's detention and deportation. In South Africa, free housing, healthcare, education, food, mobile phone, and cash. And an Uber.
And choices for jobs to do. A huge spectrum. Damn. So Tina,
And a slave queen on top of it.
We'll throw in a slave queen. Let's throw in a slave queen.
to start a family.
Hey, skega no makfie with you. Skega no makshoni with.
Reporting from South Africa, as you can hear the dogs barking. Apparently, there are lots of black people trying to climb into the house. Well, no, it's trying to commit genocide in the country. Let me show you how some of the destitute white people in South Africa live. So, I'm going to introduce you to a good friend of mine. Billy, how's the genocide going, Billy?
It's rough.
Is it rough? I see, which is why we're here.
We drink. We can't handle it anymore.
Is it? Wonderful. Karen, how's the genocide treating you?
Really tough.
Really tough. And you, Brendan?
I want asylum in Ukraine. These nice girls.
Ukraine, yeah. No. Anyway, so Karen, shall we go and show them?
I'm going to Rafa.
Genocide is terrible in South Africa. Hold on. Here we go. And this is little Luna. Hello, Luna. She keeps everybody alert in case guys like me jump over fences, you know. Let's have a look at how the people who seek asylum live. Can't you wait to go to America? Of course you don't. Are you staying in your own country?
Yes.
There we go. Well, there we go. Out.
I'm not going anyway.
She's not going anywhere. This is the real South Africa.
Born and bred.
Born and bred, and we love the place. And there we go. And there he is. Are you leaving anywhere? You going anywhere, Willie?
No, definitely not.
You love your country?
Yes. Yes, I love my country.
There we go.
Trump wants the...
Just keeping up with the asylum seekers.
South Africa is known as the Rainbow Nation, but apparently one group in this diversity diagram is fighting for its very survival: white South Africans. Specifically, Afrikaners. President Donald Trump has offered them asylum in the US.
Freaking terrible things are happening in South Africa.
This news caught some people by surprise, including many of those white South Africans themselves.
A day in my life as an oppressed white South African. I wake up in my shelter and my husband brings me coffee because it's too dangerous to go alone. I then need to wash, so I have a dip in our pool which is used for bathing and drinking as we have no running water. Then I sit down to apply for a job I'm not qualified for and cry when I don't get it.
That's one of thousands of videos from white South Africans mocking their own privilege. So why has Trump offered them asylum? Well, the South African government passed a law to allow it to seize land, like farms, without compensation, but only in exceptional circumstances, like if it's abandoned. About 72% of private land in South Africa is owned by whites. So Donald Trump has accused the South African government of using racism and violence to steal land from white people. He's also suspended all humanitarian aid to the country. So who are these Afrikaners in peril? They're descendants of mainly Dutch colonialists who, among their achievements, introduced slavery to South Africa, and in 1948 made apartheid the formal government policy. Despite owning most of the country's private land, they only make up 7% of the population. And they were able to acquire so much territory because 8 decades of racist laws banned non-whites from owning land in about 93% of the country. That was until the collapse of apartheid. Since 1994, the government's tried to undo this historic inequality. It's also compensated black owners whose farms were confiscated, and it's also bought thousands of properties from anyone willing to sell to redistribute. So where did Trump get the idea that Afrikaners needed saving? Was it from the world's richest man, South Africa's Elon Musk, standing next to him? Actually, probably not. Although Musk is involved in his own war against South Africa's employment laws, this predates him. For years, Afrikaner rights groups have lobbied foreign governments for support, saying that Black South Africa has a plan to wipe them out. It's also important to note that a leading US civil rights organisation describes AfriForum's leaders as white supremacists in suits and ties. So, is anyone going to take up Trump on his refugee offer? Here's more from the internet.
USA, USA, USA. Hey dude, what's up? I'm moving to the USA, bro. Okay, why? Because I just got refugee status, son. And why did you get refugee status? Because I'm white, bro.
While most Afrikaners seem to have dismissed the offer, others, like the people at this rally in Pretoria, seem thankful someone has finally noticed their plight.
Mr. Trump, thank you so much.
And in a country where a black household has only 5% of the average wealth of a white family, you do the math.
American, South African, British, slang.
British.
Slang. More like accent. Okay, jalapeno. 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 Literally. Literally. Literally.
Britain and
Garage.
South Africa.
Garage. 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 Crazy. Sounds like garage. Grass. 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 We so good. Tuesday. I don't know what this one is. What? What did you say? Tuesday. 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 Tuesday, isn't it?
Tuesday.
Tuesday. Harry Potter. Harry Potter. Harry Potter. Harry Potter. Harry Potter. Harry Potter. Water bottle. What's a bottle? Water bottle. Water bottle. Water bottle. Vitamin. 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 No ways. Vitamin. Yogurt.
Yogurt.
Yogurt. Yogurt. What? Yogurt. Yogurt. Hey, come on. Get my yogurt. This is 10 out of 10 yogurt. Aluminum. Aluminium. Aluminium. Dude, what? That was crazy. That's how you say it. Advertisement. 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 That one's crazy. Advertisement. What?
But South Africa and Britain.
Hey guys, it's just the one.
Almost.
Come on now. Basil. Basil. Basil.
Basil.
Basil? I don't know what that is. Eraser.
Rubber.
Rubber.
Rubber is a condom.
It's not.
You're rubbing that shit out. Teacher's saying, rub that shit out. We're rubbing it out.
Oh boy.
Volkswagen. Volkswagen.
Volkswagen. Some bougie shit.
Volkswagen. Acura. Akira.
Acura.
Acura.
Operating in South Africa almost
Grass.
the same.
Yabona bafethu masinitshela ukuthi ANC imoshile. Sisuke singakhuluma into engekho. Suke sikhuluma into ekhona masinitshela ukuthi ANC imoshile. iANC saqhubeka nokudestroya. Bese wena uyagijima nywe vote ANC vote ANC nywe vote ANC. Yabona la istrada la kusezone 12 la. Ngifuna ukunibonisa lana manazi uAviva Manqa noThulani Manqa. Ifamily yamanqa yonke ekwi government Aviva Manqa he was an advisor ye minister uLindiwe Sisulu waba iadvisor yamanye ama ministers ikasi lakhe ke leli phambi kwe garage kwe filling station ya Armstrong the late Armstrong ngifuna ukunibonisa istrada lesi istrada sivalekile no more sasebenzi istrada lesi this is a road ivalekile isaspana.
We'll drive past certain parts, you'll see the guys sitting at the street corners. And those are the ones that are still trying to get his span. At some point, now they give up. I'm asking, what do you expect them to do? No, they must start a business. With what? With which money? Do they have the skill of business? Do you know business is tough? Do you know who they're competing with? And. So what do you expect them to do? No, man, but I mean, crime can't be the answer. I'm like, I hear you and I agree with you. But you must tell me, we'll go to the Western Cape. We'll shut down the gangs. We'll shut down the drugs. And all of the leaders will be like, aye, skim pen. No, we've shut it down before. And they're like, okay, aye. So what must we do now? What do you want to say to them? The reality is most, in my opinion, I could be wrong, most criminals are criminals of survival. It's because they couldn't. Usia Kolisi doesn't have to go and hijack a car because he has to get on the rugby field. Ukabza doesn't have to kinsa anything because Melayo teacher here. But they lucky. The rest of the clever blacks, about hotel, about engineer and all these things, but the bulk of the people, 370 is not enough. What do you expect them to do, and when are we going to change this system to be inclusive to them? Because if white people don't want to share the wealth and the land, if the ANC government doesn't want to actually put skills, real skills, in the schools, and if we're not going to create an enabling environment where we're saying, look, at least and then so at least even the way you now, but if we're not building an RDP, so fundis can do rondo strong, whatever. But there's almost an agenda that is designed to say, especially for the poor black man, we will do everything in our power to make us desperate as possible, to turn you into a monster. And once you become a monster, we'll give you the stamp of a criminal record, and you'll always become a nothing. Because we need you to become a nothing.
Do you agree with him, guys?
White privilege is alive and kicking in South Africa. This is in spite of what the leader of a certain Northern Hemisphere country might be saying. White people are privileged.
Donald J.
And if you don't believe me, well, take a flight, an internal flight in South Africa from, let's say, Johannesburg to Cape Town to Durban, or even to Port Elizabeth, and you will see that more than half of the passengers are white. Why is this so? Even if only 10% of the population of the country is white, more than half of the air passengers are white. Then if you go and look at the upmarket suburbs in Johannesburg, Cape Town, or along the beautiful coastlines, and you will see that most houses, most of the big luxury houses, the holiday homes, are owned by white people. They still have it pretty good, thank you very much. But in an unusual situation, you'll notice that even in government departments where most of the employees are black, when there are white clients or white residents that go into these departments to complain, then they're given somewhat better treatment. Perhaps because the black clients are used to being treated badly, that they don't complain as much, but when the whiteys complain, they kick up a fuss, they kick up a stink, and it's easier just to deal with them quickly and get rid of them. It is true that some jobs white people cannot get. They're reserved for black people. Government will deny this, but it's a fact that if you are applying for a
White
big
and
job in
qualified.
government and you big salary, it's far more likely to go to a black person, and white people don't even bother to apply because this is reserved for the black population. Then there's the issue of crime. People often say that white people are targeted in criminal activities. I don't think this is true. I don't have statistical evidence to back me up, but my anecdotal evidence is that black people are far more likely to become victims of crime than white people. This is because the white people, having more money, tend to have security agents, they have beams around their houses, they have alarms on their cars, whereas black people don't have that or are not as likely to have such. Tough.
Le country le madoda, le country le abathathi izinto serious. Everything nje, people are just concerned about bona ukuthi ba right. They don't care. Kona manje abanye abantwana baphathwa hostage lapha. Idumbu ziyabona le. Kunini amasotsha ethu ashonile lapha. Babona ukuthi baphila life. They don't care. Angithi bona baphila life emnandi. They don't care. Ba busy baya phansi phezulu. Balala ama hotel bayenza abo check in check out. Kona manje ugelgela izolo uhlangane necommittee lapha. Icommittee buza ama question, ama party abuza ama question lapha ukuthi lithatha amasoja nina niwayisehle beniyenzela iSouth Africa or beni backup lengonya lebathi ama room lengonya lesiphethe inama mine ngale nabangani bakhe labanemali labaphethe South bangithi banemali baphethe country banama mine ngapha maye bayuse la masoja wethu ukuthi ayele awu protect land bambuza ama question izo bambuza ama question awu gelgela uzilalele ulele lapha yabona ukuthi hawe ulele lapha ngezwe nalento lebayikhuluma ulele daylight ama ekhona la kugcwele ama journalists lapha kunama camera lapha kune chairperson lapha kunama party wonke lapha bambuza imquestion ulele uthi uku dreamland bayabona ukuthi that's why abo Rwanda abantu population 1.5 million izodelela iSouth Africa uyabona that's why leselisuthu lizovela likhuluma into eliyaziyo ukushoda manje iSwaziland nayo izizocela ukuthi impumalanga ewelanda is because bayabona ukuthi le country le ayina direction abantwana babantu bafile lapha abanye ba risk impilo zabo bahleli lapha if M23 nga decide ukuthi bulalela wasele lapha alokalele kanje yena ulele lo muntu ngasi ukuthi ulele ngoba akalalanga ngoba wathi udiniwe lo muntu ukhathele ugogo ufanele uhlala le akhulisa izukulu athatha ipension angazi bakhethe lapha kule phethe bakhethana ngokuthi hayi ngiyakwazi kudala ngistruggle la nawe ngiyazi ukuthi mangibeke wena lapha mawubunyiwa uzongibackup babekani ngoba ba backup lapha na ulele lapha bona ulele ukhipha nendene lapha ulele lo muntu wabona ukuthi ulele mara abanye abantwana idumu nazi ngale abaye babambe hostage lapha ngapha lesothu liyasokolisa ngapha yabona ecountry njani ulele mara bakhonile ukuthi mayithi lockdown la bakhipha amasotsha ashana nabantu lana ashana nabantu abanye babadubula bababulala la
A very big role during the years of apartheid. This is when the apartheid laws were created. And if I had to tell you guys about all the laws they made up here, I can keep us here for weeks. And I'm not going to do that to myself or to you guys. More importantly, this was an office space to a place called the Race Classification Center. They had a very simple job. Their mandate was, if you were not obviously European or Asian, you'd have to come to this building to be then racially classified. They started with 4 racial categories, but the problem with a country like South Africa, where we've got diversity and lots of beautiful different people, these 4 categories then turn into 7, and from 7 into 11. One of them is called an honorary white. Have you ever heard of such a thing? It sounds fancy, and I'll tell you about it in a moment. They conducted humiliating scientific experiments in this building to determine what races we belong to, which I am going to demonstrate in just a moment. But before I go any further, I want to take a step back in time to the 1948 elections. After World War II comes to an end. Back then, less than 5% of our population are the only ones allowed to cast a vote. More specifically, it's the white population. You're distracting me just a little bit. And to be more specific, it's white men. They won the elections by campaigning segregation. Once they are in power, they constitute apartheid law, which is made up of two main laws. The classification of races, I just explained that to you guys, right? And a law that said that us different races, we have to start living separately. That's what apartheid means, being separated. This law was called the Group Areas Act, and that's the law responsible for what happened in D6 when the old government forcefully removed 2,000 families, 60,000 people, and bulldozed their houses. The civil rights were distributed according to a scale. Whites on the top end having all of the civil rights, bottom end, Bantu people having no civil rights, and even worse, not having human rights. Who here is familiar with this word or term, Bantu? Have you heard this before? A couple of you. A Bantu means original black African population.
So guess what just happened? I'm here in Commercial Street, so this is Parliament in the making. And check what I got. I picked it up. So now I've got it in. I'm gonna see if I can get inside. Protection services. Hello, hello. So I just got past the police, so that's good. They didn't even see it. I mean, they didn't see me as not being part of them. Okay, so here I'm now at the next block of policemen. There's one. They get stopped, but I don't, because I'm in. And my sec, they're still in session, but I made it in with such a mission, and I made it to the VIP lounge, and now I'm claiming my tax back.
And the drink beer in there.
Hello, hello. Thanks.
I'm traveling to South Africa next week, so I wanted to try redesigning their license plates in an American style. And more specifically, I wanted to try redesigning the plates of Western Cape. Because unlike South Africa's other 8 provinces, Western Cape has functionally no license plate design. It's the most boring one in the country and could definitely use a makeover. Now, plates in North America aren't only known for their more square size, but also their use of slogans and symbolism and colorful references to things about their jurisdiction. But before I get to that part of the design, I had to put down the registration number, which in Western Cape are actually region coded, CA being a plate for Cape Town. For the name of the jurisdiction at the top, I wrote Weskop, which is in Afrikaans, the most spoken language in the province. But South Africa's got a dozen official languages and plenty more that aren't official nationwide. And for this sort of fantasy license plate series, I'm imagining the drivers would be able to choose whatever language they wanted on their plates. With Western Cape also having really big numbers of English and isiXhosa speakers, in addition to Afrikaans. And while you might think that sounds a little impractical at scale, there's actually a lot of precedent for it, like in bilingual Canada, where a lot of provinces offer drivers the choice of having license plates written in either English or French. For a slogan at the bottom, I wrote Spes Bona, which is Latin for good hope. A license plate slogan I chose not only because it's official in the province, but also because it's in Latin, so it wouldn't need to be translated from license plate to license plate. In addition to the province's name, I'm also putting a couple of blue stripes along the bottom to represent the Atlantic and Indian Oceans, and in the background we've got a dual green graphic of Table Mountain, one of the most iconic landmarks in the entire country. And then in a nod to the fact that the Western Cape is South Africa's top wine-producing region by far, I'm putting bunches of grapes in the top 2 corners. My final step was to finish up a little bit of shading on the grapes and on Table Mountain, And then I also decided to add a light blue gradient at the top to sort of symbolize the sky. But then all that's left to do is sign it as a license plate talk original, and that is my final design with all the symbolism explained. I'm really happy with how this concept came out, but most importantly, let me know what you think of it in the comments.
Okay, nice.
The Chinese have built an alliance called the BRICS, B-R-I-C-S. You don't hear as much about it as you ought to. It started a few years ago, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. 5 countries. A year and a half ago, 6 more joined. And 3 weeks ago, 13 more joined.
Oh, wow.
The BRICS together is more than half the population of this planet. The United States is 4.5%, not 50% of this planet. The total output of goods and services in the BRICS is significantly larger already than the total output of the United States and its major allies known as the G7. The United States, Canada, Japan, Britain, France, Germany, and Italy. So now every country in the world, every company in the world is reassessing and redesigning its strategy for the future. And what do I mean? They're redesigning because the dominant player in the world of the last 70 years, the United States, isn't the dominant player anymore. There is a bigger player, richer player in the BRICS, which means if you're going to build a railroad in your country, you don't just go to Washington or London or Paris. You may go to them, but you're going to ask them what offer they can make, and then you're going to compare it to what you can get from Beijing, New Delhi, and Sao Paulo. And in case after case, the choice is made to go with the BRICS, not the West. So what do I mean? I mean to tell you all that if you ask me to tell you what is the biggest reality we now have to face, it's the end of the American empire.
Hey,
what we inherited from the British, because they had the last empire before this one, is now over, and there is zero chance it's coming back. It ought to have been a central issue in the presidential election we just had. Instead, the 2 candidates and their parties worked overtime to practice denial. No such a thing. The war in Ukraine, just to take one of countless examples, will show you how costly this denial is. When the war begins in February of 2022, President Biden told us, along with all of his officials, Russia would be brought to its knees. The Russian currency, the ruble, would collapse. The entire West would side with Ukraine against the Russian invasion and would defeat the Russians. None of that happened. Every part of that prediction proved false. Why? Because the way Russia was to be brought to its knees was by denying the market for Russian oil and gas, whose export the Russians depend on. It's a major industry for them. And they exported all of that energy to Western Europe. When the Western Europeans, under pressure from the United States, closed their markets to Russia, the expectation was that Russia would collapse. Instead, Russia went to its allies in the BRICS, above all China and India, and arranged to sell to them the oil and gas they no longer sold to the Europeans. As a result, Russia is growing faster this year than the United States, and it has grown at a faster rate than the United States throughout the war. You couldn't be more mistaken than this. That's what it means if you deny a reality.
I read the Expropriation Act and I'm here to set the record straight. Because
In
what's
South
happening
Africa.
is dangerous. The whole world is talking about South Africa and people are confused. They're sharing information about things they don't really understand and it's scaring them. And very quickly the conversation is going in a direction that we can't afford and don't want. We don't want another race war. My name is Catherine White. I'm a journalist and I'm here to make complex South African news stories more consumable than ever before. South Africa has a modern, advanced and brilliant constitution, often claimed the best in the world. Do you really think that the government of South Africa has passed a law that is going to take away or steal the property of white Afrikaners to the extent that they have to apply for refugee status in the United States? No. And I can tell you this because I've read the act. The law is simple and straightforward. Nobody is coming to steal your home. People are confusing issues. Kali Kriel wants President Ramaphosa to acknowledge and look into farm murders. Mr. Musk, please do not confuse issues. You are causing panic. I'm speaking on the act. But even AfriForum said no thank you to the offer of refugee status by President Trump. The act is long, bear with me. These are the key points. I'm also not talking about the 1975 Act, the one from 50 years ago. The key aspects are that it has to be in the public interest and for public good. Expropriation can only happen for reasons that serve the public, such as building roads, schools, or for land redistribution. If you're a citrus farmer and you're using the land, nobody is going to expropriate it. We're talking about land that's not being used. The second point, compensation. Owners must receive just and equitable compensation, considering factors beyond just market value. Procedure. The government must follow a clear process. Notice. Property owners must be notified in advance. Negotiation. Attempts should be made to agree on compensation before compulsory expropriation. Court involvement. Disputes over fairness or compensation can be resolved through the courts. Now let's talk about expropriation without compensation. The Act aligns with Section 25 of the Constitution, which allows for expropriation without compensation in limited circumstances, such as abandoned land and state-owned property. So no, simply being white and owning a house in South Africa does not mean your property can be taken away. The Expropriation Act and Section 25 of the Constitution protect property rights, ensuring that expropriation can only happen under specific conditions. So here's what you need to know. Number one, expropriation must serve a public interest or purpose. So the government cannot take property arbitrarily. Expropriation is only allowed for reasons that benefit the public, such as infrastructure projects, land reform, or addressing historical injustice. Number two, just and equitable compensation. If your property is expropriated, you're entitled to just and fair compensation, considering market value, investment, and history of acquisition. In rare cases, expropriation without compensation may apply, but in limited circumstances. For example, abandoned land, land held for speculation, or state-owned property, or land already owned by the state. Number three, the legal process and rights. You must be notified if expropriation is planned. You can challenge expropriation in court if it's unfair or unjust. Race is not a factor in determining whose land or property can be expropriated. So, should you be worried? If you legally own your house and you're using it, it's highly unlikely that it's going to be expropriated without compensation. The process is governed by law and the Constitution, which means there are protections against unfair expropriation. So the government has outlined specific categories of property that are more likely to be expropriated, particularly under land reform and public interest objectives. Here's what kind of property is most at risk. Abandoned and neglected land. Land held for speculation. State-owned land not in use. Land with historical injustice claims. Underutilized or underproductive agricultural land. What is unlikely to be expropriated? Private residential homes in cities and suburbs. Businesses and commercial properties that are actively operating. Farms that are actively producing food and creating jobs. While the government has legal power to expropriate, It must follow due process and offer fair compensation, unless special circumstances justify expropriation without compensation. If you made it this far, thank you, and send this to a friend who needs to know what's happening.
Did we learn anything or something? See you in the next upload.
Hehehehe